Alright, this is an original Tales Fair story, and this one took a turn I honestly did not expect. Alright, let's get into it.
My 11-year-old daughter came home and found this note. Let her die. Don't call anyone. Then we saw my husband's grandmother, pale and all alone. My daughter rushed to call an ambulance, but Grandma grabbed her hand and said, "No doctors. Just look under the bed." Soon, my in-laws lost everything. I used to think the most stressful thing in my life was packing for a vacation that cost less than a new set of tires. Turns out, the real stress begins when you walk into your own kitchen and find a handwritten instruction to let someone die. My name is Sarah. I live outside Seattle, in a big house that looks impressive to strangers and exhausting to the person who has to clean it. I have an 11-year-old daughter named Maddie, smart, observant, and allergic to injustice. And I had a husband named Eric. I say had like it's a casual detail. It's not. Eric came with a mother, Linda, who could smile while making you feel like you were a stain on her family's fabric. Linda wasn't openly cruel. She was strategic. She believed in plausible deniability the way other women believe in probiotics. Then there was Eric's grandmother, Evelyn Sinclair. For 2 years, Evelyn lived with us. She was declining, according to Linda. Weak. Confused. Not really all there. She stayed in the back bedroom, quiet, motionless, staring past people as if we were a TV left on in the corner. Maddie tried with her anyway. She'd leave drawings by Evelyn's door. Little notes like, "Hi, Grandma Evelyn. I hope you feel better. Sometimes a heart, sometimes a sun." Linda never once acknowledged those drawings. Not a "how sweet," not a "thank you," nothing. Eric would just shrug and say, "You know how Mom is." That phrase should come with a warning label. A week before everything blew up, I made a decision Eric labeled stupid. I booked a cheap 3-night getaway for me and Maddie. Ocean shores, off-season, budget resort, indoor pool, faded carpet, the kind of place where the most luxurious feature is that the coffee is free. Maddie was excited in that full-body kid way, like joy is something you can physically carry. Eric, meanwhile, looked at the reservation email like I'd sent him proof of my incompetence. "Ocean shores?" he said. "That's not a vacation." "It's 3 days," I said. "Maddie wants the beach." He made a sound like the beach was a personal insult. "It's going to be cold. It's going to be damp. What's the point?" "The point," I said, keeping my voice even, "is that our daughter has been asking for something simple, and I'm doing it." Eric didn't argue. He didn't have to. He just delivered the kind of sigh that says, "I'm letting you embarrass yourself." "Fine," he said. "Go. I'll stay here." Maddie stood there with her backpack strap wrapped around her hand, quiet and small, watching her father opt out of her happiness like it was a tedious subscription. Linda called later, because Linda always called later. "I heard you're taking Madison to Ocean Shores," she said, pronouncing it like a medical condition. "Well, that's nice." "It'll be fun," I said. She hummed. "Eric's staying behind, of course. Someone has to manage the house." Manage what? His fantasy? But I didn't bite. I never bit. Because biting Linda didn't hurt Linda. It just gave her a reason to call Eric and say, "Your wife is so emotional." So Maddie and I went. And it was lovely. Not Instagram lovely. Not we rented a villa lovely. Just real life lovely. We ate fries on the sand. Maddie collected shells like they were priceless artifacts. We swam in the indoor pool and pretended the smell wasn't aggressively chemical. We laughed. I barely checked my phone. That part will haunt me. Because while Maddie and I were playing mini golf, Eric and Linda were doing something else. I found out the way modern marriages end, through a social media post you weren't meant to see. Linda, oversized sunglasses, tropical drink, smug smile, captioned a photo, finally getting some real rest. Family time. Behind her, Eric grinned like a man who had never had to choose between his child and his ego, and the location tag? Maui. Maddie saw it over my shoulder. She stared at the screen for a long moment and said, very quietly, "So we weren't invited." I wanted to lie. I wanted to say, "Of course you were, sweetheart. It's just complicated." But Maddie is 11. She's old enough to recognize the difference between complicated and cruel. "No," I admitted. "We weren't." She nodded once. Not dramatic, not teary, just filing it away. Then she went back to the shell collection like she could control that part of the world at least. We drove home the next afternoon. Seattle greeted us with gray skies and damp air, which felt fitting. Maddie sang along to the radio. I kept my eyes on the road and tried not to imagine what was happening back at the house. I told myself it was fine. Eric was selfish, not criminal. Linda was mean, not evil. Evelyn was there, quiet, safe. That was my second mistake. We pulled into the driveway around 3 p.m. The house looked normal, expensive, still, like it was posing. But something was wrong. The porch light was on, in daylight. The air felt too quiet, like the house itself had muted the volume. Maddie hopped out first, rolled her suitcase to the door, and pushed it open with her shoulder. Then she stopped. Her suitcase tipped over. She didn't even notice. "Mom," she said. Her voice was thin. "There's a note." I walked in and saw it immediately. White paper placed dead center on the kitchen island like a centerpiece. Maddie read it out loud because she couldn't believe it was real. "Let her die. Don't call anyone." My stomach dropped so hard I felt dizzy. I snatched the paper. No signature. No explanation. But I knew the handwriting. Neat. Confident. The handwriting of someone who writes lists for other people to follow. "Linda," Maddie whispered. "Is that about Grandma Evelyn?" I didn't answer. I couldn't, because answering would make the note a fact, not a nightmare. I walked down the hallway toward the back room. Maddie followed close behind me like my shadow had learned fear. The back hallway always felt cooler, dimmer. It led to Evelyn's room, the room Linda called the quiet room, like it was a spa feature. When we got there, I saw the new lock, a keyed lock, on the outside of the door. My mouth went dry. I tried the knob. Locked. I knocked. "Evelyn?" No response. Maddie's breath hitched. Maybe she can't answer. My heart started pounding in my ears. I didn't have a key. I didn't have patience. I had the sudden clarity that something deeply wrong had happened in my house while I was buying my kid ice cream. "Stand back," I told Maddie. She didn't argue, but she stayed close. I grabbed the nearest heavy object, a metal candlestick from Linda's little vampire decor hallway table, and slammed it into the lock. Once. Twice. On the third hit, the cheap mechanism gave with a crack. The door swung open. The smell hit first. Stale air, dry heat, the distinct wrongness of a room that has had the door shut on a living person. Then I saw Evelyn. She was in bed, pale as paper, lips cracked, eyes half open. No water on the nightstand. No snacks. No meds. No call button. Nothing. Maddie made a broken sound and ran to the bed. "Grandma!" she cried, grabbing Evelyn's hand. Evelyn's fingers were cold. Maddie looked up at me, terrified. "Mom, she's dying." I moved on instinct. Checked pulse. Weak. But there. I rushed to the kitchen and grabbed a glass of water. Maddie already had her phone out. Because Maddie doesn't freeze. Maddie acts. She hit the emergency call screen, thumb trembling. I'm calling 911, she said. That's when Evelyn moved. Not slowly, not frailly. She grabbed Maddie's wrist with startling strength. Maddie froze. Her eyes widened. Evelyn's gaze sharpened, suddenly focused, and she whispered in a rough, clear voice, "No doctors." Maddie blinked. "But you—" Evelyn tightened her grip just enough to keep Maddie in place. "Just look under the bed," she said. She saw Maddie's panic and softened her voice. "Not an ambulance. Not the ER. Not yet," she whispered. "If they get me out of this house before we document what they did, they'll call it an accident. Give me 15 minutes. Then you can call whoever you want." I stared at her. This was not the woman Linda described. This was not the confused grandmother who didn't know what day it was. Maddie looked at me like, is she hallucinating? Am I hallucinating? I said, "Evelyn, you need medical help." "I will," she rasped. "But not yet. Under the bed." Maddie lowered her phone but didn't hang up. She just hovered, ready. I knelt and looked under the bed. A plastic storage bin was shoved far back, hidden like someone had intentionally placed it where no one would casually find it. I pulled it out. Inside, bottled water, electrolyte packets, a small first aid kit, a pulse oximeter, and an envelope taped to a cheap-looking phone. A sticky note on the phone read, "Call Samuel." Maddie whispered, "Who's Samuel?" Evelyn released her wrist and leaned back like she'd completed step 1 of a plan. "My attorney," she said. I stared at the phone. "You have a hidden emergency kit and a burner phone?" Evelyn's mouth twitched. "Yes." Maddie's voice shook, half horrified, half impressed. "Are you, like, spy grandma?" Evelyn's eyes flicked to her. "I'm a grandmother who got tired of being underestimated." I mixed an electrolyte packet into water and helped Evelyn drink slowly. Maddie watched her vitals on the oximeter like she'd been training for this her whole life. Then I grabbed the phone and called the only saved contact. It rang twice. "Samuel Miller," a calm voice answered. "Samuel," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "This is Sarah. I'm with Evelyn. She told me to call you." No surprise. No confusion. "Is she awake?" he asked. Evelyn rasped, "I'm awake." Samuel exhaled like he'd been waiting to hear that. "Put me on speaker." I did. "Evelyn," Samuel said. "Are they gone?" "They're in Maui," Evelyn replied. "They think I'll be dead by the time they get back." Maddie's face tightened with disgust. "That's evil." Evelyn's eyes softened, just slightly, at Maddie's voice. Samuel said, "Sarah, listen carefully. Take photos. The lock, the room, the lack of water. Everything. I'm dispatching security and a medical provider. And Sarah, don't contact Eric or Linda." I let out a short laugh that wasn't funny. "I wasn't planning on it. I'm busy discovering my house has a hostage room." Samuel's tone remained steady. "Evelyn, do you consent to law enforcement involvement?" "Yes," Evelyn said. Maddie lifted her phone again. "If she passes out, I'm calling 911 anyway." Evelyn looked at Maddie and, this time, smiled, small and real. "Fair," she said. While we waited, I kept feeding Evelyn water in small sips. Maddie stayed at her side, holding her hand. She was shaking, but she didn't run. That matters. Because when you're 11 and you see something like this, you either become frightened or fierce. Maddie was becoming fierce. Samuel arrived within 15 minutes, and he did not come alone. 2 men followed him. Security. Quiet. Professional. The kind of people who scan corners without you asking. Samuel himself was in his late 50s, dressed like a man who has argued with judges for fun. He looked at the lock, at Evelyn's cracked lips, at the empty nightstand, and his jaw tightened. "Evelyn," he said gently, "are you stable enough to talk?" Evelyn nodded. Samuel turned to me. "Thank you for opening that door." I almost snapped something sarcastic, but the truth is, I wanted to cry. So I just said, "She was locked in there." "I know," Samuel said, "and now we document it properly." He made calls. Adult Protective Services, a private medical provider, a detective he apparently knew by first name. Life lesson: when the right lawyer makes calls, doors open. The medical provider arrived, a nurse practitioner who took one look at Evelyn and started documenting everything. Vitals, signs of dehydration, condition of the room, the lock. "Do you want transport?" she asked. Evelyn's voice turned soft, shaky, convincingly weak. "Not yet." The nurse looked at Samuel. Samuel nodded. "She's competent," he said. "Document refusal." Maddie whispered to me, "She's acting." I whispered back, "Yes, and we'll talk about that later." Because in that moment, there were bigger fires. Samuel pulled me into the hallway and spoke quietly. "Sarah, I'm going to say this plainly," he said. "Eric does not own this house." I blinked. What? "The house is owned by the Sinclair Family Trust," Samuel said. "Evelyn is the trustee. Eric has been living here and representing it as his. He has no legal claim." I felt something hot bloom in my chest. Rage, humiliation, vindication, all tangled. Samuel continued. "Eric also doesn't own the company he brags about. Evelyn does." I stared at him. "What company?" Samuel gave me a look. "The seafood distribution company your husband likes to call his business. Evelyn built it. Eric works there." My brain replayed every time Eric acted superior to me. Every time he talked down to my job, my parenting, my choices, like he was a titan and I was an accessory. Turns out he was a middle manager with attitude. Samuel handed me a folder. "Evelyn asked me to prepare emergency instructions. If she was harmed, or if someone tried, this triggers immediate legal actions." I opened it. Trust documents, revocations, password lists, instructions to freeze access, names of key executives, a line that made my throat go tight. In the event of restraint or neglect, contact apps and police. Proceed with removal of occupants. This was not a confused old woman. This was a woman who had been planning. Back in the room, Evelyn gestured to her nightstand drawer. "Tablet," she said. I pulled it out. On it was a home security app with multiple camera angles: kitchen, hallway, living room, outside entry. Video footage, not audio-heavy drama. Visual proof. The kind that holds up. Evelyn's eyes were sharp as she watched my face. "I needed to see what they did when they thought I was helpless," she said. I swallowed. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I wasn't sure you were safe," Evelyn replied, blunt. "And because Linda can smell sympathy like blood." Maddie leaned closer, staring at the screen. "You were watching them?" Evelyn said. "I was learning them." Evelyn tapped a folder labeled Archive. Dates going back months. "Play that," she told me, pointing to one file. The video showed Linda holding the new lock. Eric stood beside her, smirking. Linda installed it like she was upgrading the home, not imprisoning a human being. Eric laughed. He actually laughed. Maddie's face went rigid. I clicked another video. Linda removing Evelyn's water pitcher. Not spilling it. Not forgetting it. Removing it. like a choice. Then another. Eric in the kitchen, texting, grinning at his phone, while Brittany Collins, yes, Brittany Collins, stood too close, laughing. He kissed her, casual, comfortable, like my marriage was already a closed tab. Maddie's eyes went glossy. Dad, has someone else? I put my hand on her shoulder. She leaned into me without taking her eyes off the screen. Evelyn's voice softened. I'm sorry, Maddie. Maddie wiped her face hard, angry at the tears. He always acts like we're annoying, like we're in the way. Evelyn's gaze hardened. You are not in the way. Maddie looked at her. Then why do they treat me like I am? Evelyn's eyes flicked toward the hallway where the lock had been. Because they only care about what they can take, she said. And you, sweetheart, are not something to take. You are someone to love. That did it. My throat tightened. Because Maddie deserved to hear that from an adult who meant it. Samuel returned, calm and efficient. Here's what happens next, he said. We file for an emergency protective order for Evelyn. We notify APS. We prepare law enforcement to meet them when they return. And we cut off Eric's access to the trust and the company today. Maddie whispered, fierce. Good. Samuel looked at me. Sarah, you should file for divorce and temporary custody. First thing. I nodded. My voice barely worked. Okay. Evelyn said. I want them home. I blinked. Why? Evelyn's mouth turned flat. Because I'm finished waiting. Samuel's eyes flicked to me. We can lure them back. Evelyn looked at me. Tell Eric what he wants to hear. I understood instantly. The cruel part of them wanted a death. They wanted a clean ending. So we gave them a messy beginning. That evening, I texted Eric. It happened. Call me. I stared at the screen like I was holding a live wire. Maddie asked quietly, Are we lying? Evelyn answered, We're setting a trap. Maddie nodded like that made perfect sense. Because when you've been treated like you don't matter, you learn to appreciate strategy. Eric called within minutes. I didn't answer right away. I wanted him to sit in his panic, just for a second. Then I picked up and let my voice shake. Eric. His voice was sharp, not tender, not worried about me. What do you mean, it happened? I let silence do the work. Then I whispered, Your grandma. There was a pause. Not grief. Calculation. Eric exhaled. Okay. Don't do anything. Don't call anyone. We're getting on the next flight. Don't call anyone. The exact vibe of Linda's note. My stomach turned. I swallowed it down and said, Okay. Then I hung up and stared at my phone like it was contaminated. Maddie whispered, furious. He didn't ask if you were okay. No, I said. He didn't. Evelyn's voice was quiet. He never does. The next day moved like an organized storm. Samuel filed everything. The emergency protective order, the APS report, notices to the company, instructions to freeze Eric's access to accounts and systems, corporate cards canceled, email access revoked. Evelyn made calls to her executives and board. Yes, she had a board, like she was switching off a light. Eric's name disappeared from the company directory by lunchtime. Funny how quickly important becomes unemployed. Security remained at the house. Not dramatic, not obvious, just present. And the house changed, not physically yet, but emotionally. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was living in Linda's shadow. I felt like I'd stepped out of it. That night, Maddie helped me put away the last of our Ocean Shores souvenirs, shells, a cheap keychain, a photo booth strip where we're both laughing. Maddie held the strip and said, "I'm glad we went." I looked at her. "Me too." She stared at it for a moment longer and added, "Even if Dad didn't want to come." I didn't correct her. Sometimes kids protect themselves with optimism. Sometimes you let them. At 10:58 p.m. the next day, the driveway camera pinged. Car lights. A door shutting. Footsteps. I looked at the monitor and saw them. Eric, wheeling a suitcase, moving fast like a man who thought he was heading toward money. Linda, stiff and sharp, scanning the house like she expected to see morning. And Brittany Collins, wearing a hoodie, trying to look like she wasn't arriving at my home late at night with my husband. Maddie saw Brittany and whispered, "That's her." Her voice didn't shake this time. It hardened. Inside the living room, Evelyn sat upright in a chair. Not in bed, not frail, not confused. Hair brushed, eyes clear. Samuel stood beside her, and by the entryway stood a detective and 2 uniformed officers, calm, official, not here for family drama. I told Maddie, "Stay behind me." Maddie nodded, but she didn't retreat. She stood tall. The door opened. Eric stepped inside and stopped like he'd hit an invisible wall. Because the scene wasn't what he expected. No tears, no chaos, no corpse. Just his grandmother, alive, staring at him like he was something she'd finally identified under a microscope. Eric's mouth opened. "Grandma?" Evelyn said softly. "Hello, Eric." Linda found her voice first. Of course she did. "What is this? Why are there police here? Sarah, what did you do?" "Ah, yes. Blame the woman who broke the lock. Classic." The detective stepped forward. "Ma'am, we're here regarding a report of suspected elder abuse and unlawful imprisonment." Eric's face flashed. "That's insane!" Evelyn didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. "You locked me in a room," she said, "without water." Linda scoffed. "You were fine. We were gone a few days. Sarah is exaggerating." The nurse practitioner's written report sat on the coffee table, clipped and neat. Samuel tapped it gently with one finger. "Medical documentation says otherwise," he said. Eric tried to speak. "Grandma, listen." Evelyn cut him off with one word. "No!" The air changed. Because no, from a woman who has always said yes, hits like thunder. Samuel nodded to the officer and handed over printed evidence. Photographs of the lock, the note, the empty bedside table, the dehydration signs, and selected video clips. Not spy movie clips. Real clips. Linda installing the lock. Eric standing there. Linda removing water. Eric walking past the door without stopping. Brittany in the kitchen, too close to Eric, laughing while Linda typed. Eric's breathing went shallow. Maddie whispered, just loud enough, "You did that." Eric's eyes flicked to her. For a fraction of a second, I saw him remember she existed. Then his face hardened. "Maddie, this is—" Maddie interrupted, because apparently my daughter had finally reached her limit of polite silence. "This is what?" she snapped. "A misunderstanding? You left her locked up. You left a note telling us to let her die." Linda's eyes flashed at Maddie like she wanted to slap her with a glance. "This is why children should stay out of adult business," Linda hissed. Maddie lifted her chin. "Then adults should stop doing evil stuff in front of children." The detective looked at Eric. "Sir, step over here." Eric's voice rose. "I live here." Samuel spoke calmly. "No, you don't. The house is owned by the Sinclair Family Trust. Evelyn is the trustee. You've been served with a trespass notice, and we've already petitioned the court for an emergency protection order." Eric blinked rapidly. "What? That's—" Evelyn's voice was almost gentle. "You liked calling it your house. I let you. It made you feel important. Eric's face flushed. Linda sputtered. "This is ridiculous. He's her grandson." The officer's expression didn't change. "Turn around, sir." Eric stared at the handcuffs like they were a personal betrayal. "You're arresting me? For a family issue?" The detective's tone was flat. "Elder abuse. Unlawful restraint. And we're investigating financial exploitation." Linda's voice climbed into shrill territory. "Sarah did this! She's manipulating Evelyn!" I laughed. I couldn't help it. It was either laugh or scream. "Linda," I said, "I just got back from a budget resort with a broken waffle maker. I am not the criminal mastermind here." Evelyn's mouth twitched. Brittany took a step toward the door. Security quietly blocked her. No drama. Just no. Evelyn turned her gaze to Brittany. "You should have stayed away from my family," she said. Brittany tried to speak. "This is a misunderstanding." Samuel cut in smoothly. "We can do this the easy way or the expensive way. I suggest you contact counsel." Eric barked, "Brittany, go!" Brittany hesitated, eyes darting. The detective looked at her. "Ma'am, you're not under arrest right now, but you may be contacted by investigators. Do not delete any messages, photos, call logs, or financial records, and don't try to contact Evelyn." That wiped the smugness right off her face. Eric was cuffed and escorted out. Linda followed, still arguing, still furious, still shocked that consequences exist at all. At the threshold, she turned back at Maddie one last time, eyes sharp with spite. Maddie didn't flinch. The door shut. And the house, my house, Evelyn's house, finally felt like it exhaled. Maddie sank onto the stairs, shoulders shaking. I crouched in front of her. "Hey." She looked up with wet eyes. "He really wanted her to die." I swallowed hard. "Yes." Maddie's voice cracked. "Did he want us to not matter too?" I pulled her into my arms so tight I probably bruised us both. "You matter," I whispered. "You matter more than anything." Behind us, Evelyn's voice was quiet, almost regretful. "You matter," she repeated. "And I'm sorry my family made you feel otherwise." Maddie wiped her cheeks and looked at Evelyn. "Why did you pretend?" Evelyn stared toward the dark hallway. "Because sometimes," she said, "the only way to learn who people are is to let them think they've already won." Over the next few weeks, life became paperwork and healing. APS followed up. The detective took statements. Evelyn's medical documentation and the photos of the lock didn't leave room for cute excuses. Eric's attorney tried the family conflict angle. The state doesn't care about your family conflict when an elderly woman is locked in a room without water. I filed for divorce. Emergency custody. The kind of paperwork you never imagine signing until you have to. Eric called from jail. I didn't answer. Linda tried from a different number. I didn't answer. Brittany messaged me online starting with "as a woman." I blocked her before she finished the sentence. The company Evelyn built moved on without Eric, like he'd been a temporary intern. Evelyn moved out of the back room into a sunny front bedroom like she was reclaiming oxygen. Maddie helped pick curtains. Evelyn let her, which was its own quiet revolution. Some nights I found Maddie sitting with Evelyn, listening to her talk about the ocean, about business, about how people will try to take what they didn't build. Evelyn would say, "Never sign anything you didn't read." Maddie would nod like she was storing it for her future. One morning, Evelyn handed me a folder. Inside were trust amendments and a college fund plan for Maddie. I stared at it. "Evelyn, you don't have to." "I do," Evelyn said. I watched them treat her like she was disposable. I watched her show compassion anyway. That deserves protection. Maddie, standing in the doorway, whispered, "Is that for me?" Evelyn's gaze softened. "Yes, for you." Maddie stepped forward slowly, like she wasn't used to adults choosing her. "I didn't do anything special," she said. Evelyn replied, "You tried to save someone. In this family, that's apparently rare." Maddie made a small sound that was half laugh, half sob. "Okay." And then she hugged Evelyn. It wasn't a Hallmark hug. It was awkward and real, and exactly what it should have been years earlier. Months later, the house felt different. Not perfect, but safe. We repainted the kitchen. Maddie insisted on herbs in the backyard because plants are calming. Evelyn deadpanned, "Basil won't fix betrayal." And Maddie said, "It might fix pasta." And Evelyn actually laughed. That sound, Evelyn laughing, made me realize how long that house had been holding its breath. People ask me sometimes, "Do you regret marrying him?" I think about the note. I think about Maddie's shaking thumb over the 911 button. I think about Evelyn's hand grabbing my daughter's wrist, strong, deliberate, like she was anchoring her to the truth. And I think about Eric walking into the living room expecting a funeral and finding police, a lawyer, and a grandmother who refused to die on schedule. Regret is complicated, but here's what I know. Family isn't who shares your last name. It's who shows up when a door is locked and someone inside is waiting to be saved. Eric and Linda thought kindness was weakness. They thought silence meant surrender. They thought let her die was a plan. Instead, it became evidence. Evidence has a funny habit of turning into handcuffs. So yes, my in-laws lost everything. But what mattered most? My daughter learned she's not invisible, and I learned that sometimes the quietest person in the house isn't powerless. Sometimes she's just collecting proof. Thanks for watching till the end. If this story hit close to home, give it a like and subscribe for more. And I'm curious, who do you think was really wrong here? Tell me in the comments. See you next time.